Alright, so part 3 here. Now, what I'm going to do, start where I left off here. Okay, we upset a U.S. District Attorney. About this time, someone suggested that I go see a U, whatever that is, District Attorney. That maybe he could stop the judge from running over us. After many phone calls, a meeting was arranged with U.S. District Attorney David Zucher, and he, in his office in Pierre, South Dakota. A good friend of mine, Bill Paulman from Anita, South Dakota, and my brother Lloyd went with me. Boy, did we get a shock. So, first of all, Mr. Zucher said a judge can do no wrong because every word that comes out of his mouth is law. What? Since when is that shit? Because Mr. Zucker said. I asked him if it was a crime to violate a federal law. He was very empathetic, and that it is indeed a crime. I then asked him if it is his job to prosecute and act upon a complaint. He said, yes, it is. So I laid down 2 coins. One was a pre-1965 silver dollar, which is 90% pure silver. The other was a post-1964 coin, which is about 90% copper. Besides these, I laid a photocopy of 31 USC 321, which outlined the standard for coins. It reads, the standard for both gold and silver coins in the United States shall be such that of 1,000 parts by weight, 900 shall be of pure metal, and 100 of alloy. The alloy of the silver coin shall be of copper. The alloy of the gold coins shall be of copper, or of copper and silver. But the silver shall in no case exceed 1/10 of the whole alloy. He picked up the coins and looked at them and said that he could not tell any difference, but his face was getting very flushed as he spoke. Then he said he changed the law anyway. He rolled his chair away from his desk and reached up and pulled a new law book out of the case and thumbed through it until he found 31 USC 321. It read exactly as the photocopy I had laid on his desk. He looked at a pocket supplement updating the law, no changes. His face growing even redder. He turned and said, "Get out of my office. I don't want to talk to you anymore." So he pissed him off. He got triggered, dude. I asked him, what have I done? You said it was a crime to violate the law. I'm a citizen of the state, and I think the laws have been broken. I want to sign a complaint, and I want you to prosecute. To this, U.S. Attorney Zucher screamed, I told you, get out of my office! Grabbed his phone and called U.S. Marshal and told him to come in and threw us out. Soon, the U.S. Marshal came into Zucher's office, put his hand in the gun and said, get out now or else. Then he escorted the 3 of us out, Zucher's office, through the hallway, down the stairs, and completely out of the federal building to the street. Most of the news media continued to cover up about the bankers. Bankers. The next time I ran into Gordon Johnson, the reporter from Rapid City, we had coffee and a long talk, and he told me that he had taken his college textbook, the Truth in Money book, and put them side by side and read them, comparing the information. Both books agree in how the system was designed and how it worked. But that is where the college textbook stopped. So that's a cover-up, really. The Truth in Money book went on to explain the end result of such a money system. Gordon admitted how he had believed the textbook and trusted the system, but now he could see how it was certain to destroy our country unless the debt money system was stopped and replaced with an honest wealth money system. Occupy the Federal Reserve. Occupy the Federal Reserve. That's my whole channel now. And the geoengineering programs. geoengineeringwatch.org. Gordon began writing feature articles about people living around the Rapid City area who were campaigning hard to get the story to other people about how our banker-controlled government was destroying our country and the lives of its citizens. However, the news media was not giving it any coverage at all. Excuse me. Okay, so Gordon began writing the feature articles about the people living around the Rapid City area who were complaining hard to get this story out to other people about how our banker-controlled government was destroying our country and the lives of its citizens. Excuse me. However, the news media was not giving it any coverage. Oh yeah, I just read that. I called Tina Harrison, the associate creator of Sioux Falls, South Dakota. I asked her if they write down some stories of the farm crisis and the money system. All she gave me was one exercise or one excuse after another why they could not do this. In the frustration, I asked her, "What do I have to do? Threaten to shoot somebody before you will cover my story?" She said, "Oh, Byron, don't talk like that over the phone. It might be taped." To this day, there is one thing I cannot understand. If this is such a free nation, why is everyone so worried about his phone being tapped? Tina must have been right, though, because after that, I sure got a lot of press. There you go. So, I think, back then they were really paranoid about their phones being tapped, and nowadays we're just like, yeah, that's just how it is. This is pre-9/11, obviously. U.S. Marshals attacked Gordon Call. One evening about a week later, I received news that the Fed had tried to kill Gordon Call again. Jeez. There was a big shootout at Medina, North Dakota, during which 2 U.S. Marshals were killed, and that Gordon Call's son was badly wounded at the rest of the people abducted by an invading army of U.S. Marshals, FBI agents, and other government agents. Jeez. They stormed him. For you to understand what happened, you must realize that Gordon Call knew it was only a matter of time until they again would try to kill him. This is why most of the time he kept a rifle with him. The Fed were also unaware of this. A few days before the attack, Call and I, visiting Mike Phillips and Ashley, he told that I should see a U.S. attorney. He knew a U.S. Marshal who knew to go see this guy in Pierre. He then called U.S. Marshal Wigglesworth. That's a great name. I could only hear one side of the conversation, but before long, their conversation turned to Gordon Call again. I heard Mike say, why don't you just leave him alone? You knew he's armed and that he will protect himself. Why was there all this fuss over a trumped-up warrant that the feds claimed they had for Gordon? It was over 2 years old, and it was issued just because Gordon failed to call a probation officer after he had been released from prison. That's ridiculous. He had been put into prison for failing to file a tax return, which is also ridiculous. That's a debtor's prison, literally, right there. I had to wonder what kind of federal agents we have. They would go out and gun down a man on a misdemeanor warrant. A misdemeanor is like a traffic violation. The answer to this question came a month or so later. I had told the reporter Gordon Johnson about Mr. Call and many of the things Call had related to me. Johnson said he would like to write a series of stories on Call. He wanted me to set up a meeting between them, so I called and talked to Gordon and Scott Fall about the proposed interview. They were to talk it over and let me know. Scott Fall is spelled F-A-U-L, by the way. I was out at the ranch taking care of things when I got a call from Mike Phillips telling me of an upcoming meeting to be held in Medina. It was to be a RAP session, rap session, hearing knowledge and thought on how to protect ourselves from the corruption going down in the government. Is that like Payday Monsanto? He's like my favorite rapper ever. Payday Monsanto. I got a playlist. Go look that one up. That's great. When I got to Mobridge, Judy was having trouble with the plumbing, and instead I fix it before I go to do any meeting. So I didn't go. While we were working on the plumbing, the phone rang. Mike wanted to know if I was there. When Judy said yes, he said he was so relieved, and then told Judy that there had been a shootout and he wasn't sure what happened or who all was involved. Wow. He wanted me to be sure and call up if anyone from North Dakota group contacted me. That's insane, dude. We turned on the radio TV to see if we could catch any news of what was happening. I was sure what to do, or if I could do anything. I wasn't sure what to do or if I could do anything, sorry. So I called Gordon Johnson and that was all too late to get the interview with Gordon Call. He asked what I was talking about. I told him that there had been a shootout and that Gordon had gotten away and he couldn't be found. He wouldn't believe me. At that moment, a bulletin came out on the radio, so I had the receiver so he could hear it too. He told me not to do anything, and he'd get right back to me. A few minutes later, he called and said his boss, the editor, told him he could go to North Dakota and get a story, and if I would go along. Naturally, I said yes. He said he would leave Rapid City immediately, and he wanted to go to North Dakota and see if he could find out what really happened. Johnson arrived at my house about 2:30 a.m. He had experienced an encounter at the Missouri Bridge, just west of the Mo Bridge. At the east end of the bridge, he was stopped by the highway patrol. They were armed with shotguns and searched his person and his car. They questioned him as to who he was, where he had come from, and where he was going. He told them he was a reporter from Rapid City Journal on his way to see Byron Dale. They let him pass. By this time, we noticed patrol cars driving by our house, on a regular basis. They were going up and down the street, as well as the alley. When a patrol car passed the house and went around the corner, we left the house and got into Gordon Johnson's car and left town, avoiding the main routes. We were only out of Mobridge about 25 miles when Gordon noticed we were being followed. He turned onto another road to see if we really were being followed or if he was getting paranoid. Sure enough, the headlights kept up with us, and soon enough there was a pair of lights. They were actually being tailed by two cars. For the rest of the time we were in North Dakota, we had shadows. Two shadows. A few days later, the FBI called Judy and told her she had to come in for questioning. When they called her and discussed the time and place of her to meet them, she said I would be there, be with her, that probably they wanted to talk with me too. They assured her not, that she was the only one they were requesting to come in. This really puzzled Judy. She was not involved in any activities and certainly didn't know anything the FBI would be interested in anyway. All she had done was go to work, come home, and keep the house up and take care of the family. Anyway, on February 18th, on the way to my nephew's wedding, we went to Aberdeen and visited with the FBI and the U.S. Marshals. They may have wanted to talk to only Judy, but the only one they did talk to was me. They asked all kinds of questions about Gordon Call. Wow. When there wasn't any information I could give them, they were getting desperate for a breakthrough, and they told me that there was a reward for Golden Call. I asked, what did they mean? They replied that they were aware of my problems with the PCA. They offered to take care of that if I would tell them where Gordon Call was. Wow. I replied that I could not do that because I didn't know where Gordon Call was. They sweetened The offer with not even if we paid you in gold? Like, what the fuck? Really? And I cussed right there. I don't care anymore. I'm just gonna make it so it's my channel's not for kids, because I have to cuss, man. This kids wouldn't be interested in this anyway, because all those new terms of services they're trying to make all these channels tell the whether or not they're family friendly or adult only content. So I guess I'm adult only content. A few days later, the newspaper headlines read, FBI offers Timberlake rancher $32,000 to turn in call. Wow. From then on, the interest from the press increased as well as the radio and TV. They even had a TV crew come in as far away from Chicago. After the shootout in Medina, every time we would go to a court hearing, there were cops all over the place, and everyone who entered the courthouse was searched. Wow. Self-appointed God names receiver. Back in January, the PCA had asked the court to appoint a receiver. At that time, I didn't visualize what a big farce and fraud it was going to be. I was told the receiver was to see that there were funds available to take care of the operating expenses. That was not the way things worked out. After Sheriff Kittleson was appointed receiver, he told me he had gone to the banks to borrow some money to pay for the receiver's bond. Of course, banks today don't lend money. They lend credit, which they create. Anyway, once Kettleson was told his bond had already been taken care of. He did not know by whom. He also did not know that the attorney's fees had also been taken care of, too. After that, it was plain to see that PCA had two attorneys working for them, Ron Johnson and the receiver's attorney, Curtis Hanks, who just happened to be the Judge Chetter's brother-in-law. Ooh. Big Cheshire smile. On the 1st of March, we had another hearing. When we arrived at the courthouse, we were given papers stating that PCA, through their attorney, Ron Johnson, was moving for a summary judgment. In South Dakota, you cannot have a motion before the court unless it is submitted at least 5 days before the hearing. But that doesn't make any difference when the court is presided over by a self-appointed God. When a court set out to do it to you, they just do it. Like Nike, I guess. Once in a while, they're appointing the receiver. I said to the Judge Cheddar, you can't do that. You're not God. And he replied, I am in this court. At the end of this March first hearing, the judge said would make things under advisement. That he would take things under advisement. About a week or so later, he denied any and all of my points and granted to PCA everything they wanted. It was about March 8 when Judge Cheddar made this ruling to grant the summary judgment to the PCA. The next morning, Gordon Johnson called and asked, how do you feel today? I replied, I am not going to talk to you today. I am angry, and I don't want to talk to you. Then he said, strictly off the record, just between you and me, what do you think? And I said, strictly off the record, I think that bunch in the court are the most corrupt people I've ever known, and they should be shot. Oh, he shouldn't have said that. Gordon went on to ask me what I was going to do now. I replied that I didn't know, that I was not going to worry about it right now because my youngest son Corey had a couple of wrestling meets this weekend in Pierre and I was going to watch him. After that, I would decide what to do. The next morning, most of what he had said was front page news. Needless to say, that brought a flurry of phone calls from new people all over the state and from Minnesota. This was not all bad because it gave me a chance to explain how our debt money system works and what the end results would be if we didn't do something to change it. That's awesome. Any coverage of the Federal Reserve at all is good coverage, because we want people curious about how the system works, because most people don't understand how money works here, and that's why we're debt slaves here. That's why it doesn't matter who you vote for. It doesn't matter who you vote for if you have a central bank running everything. Okay, so just before we left for the wrestling matches Friday afternoon, a man by the name of Don Gomer called and said he was from the Department of Criminal Investigation, and said that he had received a call from someone named Smith in Rapid City. He said, "Smith thought we ought to visit with you. Could you come on down here?" I replied, "Yes." Excuse me. "I'll stop in. We're going to be in Pierre anyway, and I would be happy to visit with you." My friend Bill and I had quite a talk with Groomer and Jerry Baum. When we closed the conversation, I said, if nothing else, if you guys won't pay any attention and won't stop the violations committed against me, at least arrange a meeting with the governor, attorney general. I would like to meet them. They said they would try. The next morning, he went to the wrestling tournament. We went to the wrestling tournament, and we were there all day. It was late when Judy, Corey, and I had got back to Mobridge, and so I stayed overnight in town instead of going out to the ranch. In the morning, Sunday, March 13th, Judy went to work, and Corey and I got ready to go to church. Just as we were leaving, I got a phone call informing me the calves that were in the lots of the ranch were gone. The sheriff came and we talked, but nobody seemed to know what happened but PCA. It seemed they knew, because earlier in the day, Ron Johnson called my father to ask if he knew that the calves were missing. Wow. So much later, we discovered a letter from Ron Johnson to the Assistant Attorney General, Douglas E. Clute. It's Douglas E. Clute, K-L-U-D-T. Following are some very revealing excerpts from the letter, which indicates how my calves disappeared so mysteriously. And it also indicates the sneaky yet brazen mentality of those involved in our South Dakota justice system. Dear Mr. Clute, this is a follow-up of our discussion yesterday. Although State Attorney General Harvey Crow has suggested an auction sale at the farm, you suggested it might be better for all involved if there be an unannounced levy and taking of physical possession of the cattle. Assuming the plan is for the receiver to arrive at the place unannounced with PCA cowboys and the protection of law enforcement officers to gather in and haul away the property. We then face the practical questions as to where to keep the property until the sale and where to hold the sale. That is a good question. The place of sale and presumably the place where the property would have to be held is secured during a period of at least 10 days. Okay. It can seemingly be any private place with public access for inspection, bidding, and removal of the property either within or outside the county. I must confess, this interpretation of SDCL 15-19-5 could be found in error by any reviewing court. S. Ronald R. Johnson. Alright, so that was the actual document. Getting ready to do it. To Dale. Not cool. An early Friday morning, March 18th, I got a phone call from Jim Carrier, editor of the Rapid City Journal, and he asked if everything was okay. He asked if there was anything going on at the ranch. I responded, no. Why? Well, he said, it just came over to the wire that there was an accident down by Waterstown at South Dakota, and those involved could not find any highway patrol to investigate. When someone asked where in the world they were, someone else said that They had called them all in because they were getting ready to do it to Dale. I was just calling to see if everything was okay. What? That's crazy. We talked a while longer. By this time, I was a little nervous, so I got on my Mini 14 and laid it on the table in the kitchen. A couple hours later, I called the Rapid City Journal and talked to a publisher. I asked if he knew anything that might happen. He told me that he had called the Governor Janklow, Janklow, it's a weird name, and was informed that there was nothing to such rumors. Janklow assured him that there was nothing planned concerning Dale. Next, I got a call from Don Gromer of the Department of Criminal Investigations. He said, "Byron, we've been thinking about your problem, and we can arrange to have a meeting with the Attorney General, Mark Murtherhenry." That's Mark, Mierhenry. Murtherhenry. Okay. Would you consider meeting with us? Could you come to Mobridge Saturday morning? Sure, I said. Where would you like to meet? He asked. I suggested we meet at the Wheel, the family restaurant where Judy works. He asked if 8 o'clock would be okay. I told him that would be fine with me, and then I told him about the call from Jim Carrier and asked him if he knew of anything that might be going on. Gromer assured me that nothing was going on concerning me and that he knew of. So I'm just seeing how much time I got on here. Okay. Alright, so it just so happened my brother and his wife were visiting with my folks, so I went there to visit with them for a while Friday night. Then I went to the Mobridge. The next morning, we got a phone call about 5:30 a.m. Judy answered the phone, and someone asked, "Is Byron there?" Judy asked, "Who wants to know?" After listening to the caller for a moment, she hung up the phone and said, "Byron, they're going to do it to you." What do you mean, honey? I'm telling you, Byron, they're going to do it to you. That guy just called to warn us that there were 15 highway patrol cars gassing up in Shelby, then heading west, and he couldn't figure out where else they could be going but to our ranch. I told her, this is America, honey. They don't do things like that. Byron, she insisted, I'm telling you, you're going to be in chains before the day is over. Boy, what a prophet she turned out to be. We didn't know just what to do. I didn't want to believe that Gromer had lied to me. He would be the logical one to ask if they were coming after me. So I tried calling him. No matter where I called, no matter who I talked to, no one seemed to know where he went. Judy was certain that I was being set up. They had tricked me away from the ranch and into coming to Mobridge for some reason. The only way he could possibly foil their plans was for me to go back to the ranch. If I was at the ranch and got a hold of news reporters, maybe we could avoid a confrontation. We decided I should go to the ranch, and then on the way out to the ranch, I didn't see anyone. Didn't meet anyone, nor notice anyone following me. As soon as I got to the ranch, I called Judy to let her know I was home and everything was alright. She told me she had watched me leave and that there was a Bronco-type vehicle waiting across the street and that it had followed me. It had turned the corner and followed me up the street all ways before it turned on its lights. Later in the court hearing, the DCI testified that they had an officer, Lichowski, watching my house and reporting on our every move. I told her of my phone call to Jim Carrier, Carrier, and that I thought everything would be fine. But just to be on the safe side, I would start calling reporters and alert them maybe one of them should come to the ranch. Judy wanted to know what she could do. I told her, go to the Wheel and meet Gromer and Murtherhenry. Corey took Corey down to the auditorium to the wrestling weigh-ins, and when they went to the wheel for breakfast, After a while, Groomer and Mere Henry came in. Judy and Corey went over to talk with them. Judy had some of the materials I wanted to read and discuss with them. She gave the materials to them, then asked what was going on. She told them of the early morning phone call, and I asked them to point blank, what they were planning for us. They assured her that no plans involving the Dales, they told her there were no plans to go to the Dale Ranch and confiscate property. They wanted to show how Judy felt. She told them that they owed it to Byron to visit with him and explain, at least or what they had to say, that Byron was a tax-paying citizen of South Dakota and that they were obligated to at least talk with him. They were real vague and couldn't seem to make up their minds just what they were going to do. Judy told them they were obligated to let her know when they decided because she owned half the property and felt she was entitled to know what was going on. Besides, if they were going out to the ranch, she felt she should be there with me. No way did she feel I should have to go through the facing them alone. They promised they would let her know. She gave them the phone number of the auditorium, explaining that Corey was wrestling in a tournament and she had volunteered to help at the awards table. They told her to go ahead with her plans since they didn't know what they were going to do. They promised her they would call if they decided to go to the ranch. Earlier, as mentioned before, Judy watched me leave and noticed a car follow and suspect that I was being followed. She became afraid and called Lloyd and told him what had happened at that point. He thought things were looking very suspicious, and so he called the governor. Governor Janklow, Janklow, said that he didn't know that anything was going on, but said that he would do some calling and see what he could learn. Then Lloyd, my brother, called the Carson County Sheriff. The sheriff told Lloyd that he didn't know anything about any plans, only that they were going to be meeting in Timberlake that morning, which he's supposed to attend. Lloyd called and he said what was going on in Timberlake to see if there was any activity that might give him a clue as to what was going on. He planned to call me when he returned. Later he called and told me, Byron, you can't believe it. There's no question what they have in mind. There are trucks, semi-trucks, stack movers, horse trailers, a portable corral, everything. There's even an armored personnel carrier. After Lloyd's call, Governor Janklow called and said, wow, this is insane. I'm telling you, Byron, if you do anything at all, we'll just shoot you. That's the governor. We've heard that you're going to shoot to protect your property. I've put out orders to kill you. I told Janklow I had no intention of shooting anyone and I didn't want to get shot. But this thing they were doing to me was all a fraud and all wrong. I told him he ought to put a stop to it and at least listen to what I had to say. He hung up on me. My next call was from Jim Nelson, editor of the Timberlake Topic. He wanted to know what was going on. I told him I didn't know. It's very obvious something is coming off. I'm just sitting here armed and scared. The next call was from Jerry Baum, director of South Dakota Highway Patrol. He said, Byron, it's looking kind of bad for you. Could I come out and talk to you? Let's see if we can negotiate some kind of settlement and try to do something to stop this. I'd be tickled to death to talk with you, I replied, but demanded you have to give me your word that you won't do anything. I don't want any surprise attacks. If you want to come out and talk like a gentleman, then fine, but I want your word. He promised, absolutely, I give you my word. We won't try any funny stuff. When Baum and the deputy arrived at my house, I was on the phone talking with Jim Carrier, editor of Rapid City Journal. I told him to please come in and just sit with the deputy trooper. Started around behind me. I said, I just soon you'd go around in front of me. What sat at the table, my Mini 14 was still lying on the table. It was pointing right where Jerry Baum was about to sit. He asked me to move it. I said I'd be glad to. So I laid it on the chair beside me. Then we sat down and began to talk. Wow, didn't expect that. They told me there were quite a few people outside. Then Baum handed me a bunch of papers and said, here is the order we talked about over the phone. The one you said didn't have the clerk of court signature. Here's the original Byron, and it does not. And it does have the signature. Okay. I said okay, and he laid it on the table. Baum then asked me if I would consider negotiating. He proposed I give them part of the cattle if we could slow them down until this could be worked out. I said yes, I would be willing to do that. They didn't know what to do then because they hadn't anticipated me being willing to negotiate. After more discussion about the problem at hand, they changed the subject and asked questions about my boys. Murphy asked if he could go to the bathroom. When he returned, he started showing me a lot of interest in the Mini 14. Baum asked me if Murphy could look at it, saying Murphy was kind of a gun nut. I said sure, and told him how my boys like to use it for coyote hunting. During that part of the conversation, I received 2 or 3 phone calls. All the time, Murphy was working on his way closer and closer to me. I was so engrossed in our conversation, I trusted Baum. He said there would be no foul play. I was not on guard. Alright. Jerry Baum leaned forward and took the papers he had brought into the house, and turning up the corner of his page, he said, well, Byron, don't you think you should pay them? I had leaned ahead, drawn into the conversation, when all of a sudden, wham, came the ketchup bottle. A full 32-ounce glass of bottle of ketchup smashing into my skull. Jesus. Fucking shit, dude. Bright lights, an explosion went in on my head. I had been sitting down and the blow was so hard it knocked me back against the kitchen wall. I was stunned. All I could do was think of a way of getting away. I staggered towards the kitchen door. There was only one way out. Officer Murphy was right behind me. When I got to the porch, Murphy grabbed me. He came over my head and shoulders and got a clinch on me. All I could do was see his crotch. I grabbed the hole. Boy, did he turn me loose and back off. That's hilarious, dude. Go for the balls, man. When banksters are coming after your wallet, go after their balls. As I turned to get away, Jerry Baum came through the door and jumped on me, knocking me to the floor. We wrestled around and 2 got on me, and they handcuffed me. Baum was lying on my head and chest. I told him if they handcuffed me in front, I would be quiet, but they refused. Murphy was jerking me around, trying to put the handcuffs on, so I reached up and kicked him in the head and knocked him away from me. He got up and scooted around Baum, knelt down beside me, measured up the distance to my face, and started beating the left side of my temple and face. He hit me about 12 times as hard as he could. Finally, I said, you son of a bitch, if you think you can knock me out, we'll be here for a long fucking time. You seem to bring him back to his senses because he quit. By this time, I was almost knocked senseless. Baum was panting and gasped. I think we got him. Go call for help. Murphy jumped up and went into the kitchen to get their radio, which was lying on the table, and called for assistance. At first, no one answered. Finally, someone responded. Murphy said, come in, quick. We got him under control. We need help to cuff him. Unbelievable bullshit, dude. fuck, man. The next thing I knew, the whole house filled up with cops. They jerked me up on my feet and handcuffed my hands behind my back. One officer grabbed a towel to wipe the blood off my face. I told them not to touch me. They left my face alone. Then pulled me back into the kitchen. About then, Attorney General Mark Henry burst into the room and yelled, "Arrest that man for assaulting an officer!" Puzzled, I asked, "Who did I assault?" Since I was the one who was beaten and bloodied. He became embarrassed and irritated. A young officer, Drupow, had come into the house and stood by me, helping me to stand. I felt he was looking out for me. I asked for my watch, then looked around and finally found it on the porch. It was covered with blood, so they washed it and put it on my wrist, and they threw a coat over my shoulders and led me outside. As I walked through the porch, I looked down to where we had struggled. There was a large pool of blood. Ironically, right in the middle of it, laying face down, covered with blood, was my pocket-sized copy of the Constitution of the United States. Jesus. When we got outside, I couldn't believe my eyes. I thought all the cops were in the house, but there were dozens of them in the yard. They were armed with some of the biggest guns I'd ever seen. They were armed like the A-Team on TV. Damn, dude, I pity the fool. As we were walking across the yard, I noticed Jerry Baum asked Jerry, "Who did I assault?" He just got red and turned away. Then Mir Henry noticed how badly beaten and bloody I was and said, "He looks pretty bad. Take him to a doctor. He wants to go. Just don't take him to Mobridge." I asked them to take me to Mobridge. The next closest place was Gettysburg. Mobridge is only 42 miles from the ranch. Gettysburg is 115 miles away. Apparently, they refused to answer his questions about what had happened to me, and they refused his request to be allowed to go to the ranch. On the way back to my parents' ranch, Lloyd met up with our other family members who were on the way to my ranch. His wife, Jenny, had been trying to get through to my ranch by phone for a long time. No one answered. However, she eventually got through to the officer in charge of rape and carnage taking place at my ranch. The officer had given them permission to come to my ranch and see what was taking place. Lloyd jumped into the car with them, and together they proceeded to my ranch. When they arrived, they were immediately placed under guard. In answer to their questions, the guard told them that there had been a struggle, but that I had not been seriously injured and that I had been taken into custody and removed from the ranch. However, the guards would not tell them where I had been taken, in spite of repeated requests. They were not allowed to go into the ranch house. They were told that the house was a crime scene, and they would be permitted into the house when the officers had completed their investigation. So after what seemed like an eternity, they were finally escorted into the house. Once in the house, they were told, once they were in the house, was in the exact condition that it had been when I was removed. Little did they know that the officers were lying to them over and over again. They later discovered that the house had been in shambles from the violent fight that had taken place. My blood covered much of the floor and was splattered all over the walls, furniture, and other items in the house. While the family had been kept under armed guard outside and lied to repeatedly about my condition, other officers had been perpetrating a massive fraud through Operation Cleanup in the house, so that the family could be taken into the house and lied to some more about my condition and the condition of the house when I had been removed. At 5 o'clock that afternoon, Highway Patrol Army and all the other vehicles had left the ranch. After they had gone, Lloyd and others returned to the house and made a thorough search. As they searched, they began to uncover evidence of heinous action that had been perpetrated against me. They discovered splatters of my blood scattered around the kitchen and porch that the officer had missed while trying to get rid of the evidence for police brutality. They also discovered various other damages that indicated a violent, bloody fight had taken place in the house, and that things had been rearranged to suit the perpetrators. So let me leave it there, dude. 45 minutes. Alright.